Millionaire CEO came on a blind date in a wheelchair. What the single dad did next left her stunned. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The restaurant door opened with a soft chime, and Luke Andrews' world shifted on its axis. He'd been sitting at the corner table for exactly 10 minutes, his water glass already half empty from nervous sips, his tie adjusted 3 times since arriving. Grace's words from an hour earlier still echoed in his mind. "Dad, you deserve to be happy again. Mom would want this for you." His 16-year-old daughter had practically pushed him out the door, fixing his collar and reminding him that his coworker Angela said this woman was special, a successful businesswoman who shared his love of history documentaries. The warmth of Marcello's enveloped him. Soft lighting, the gentle murmur of conversations, the rich aroma of garlic and wine. But all of that faded the moment she entered. Amy Monroe glided through the doorway in a sleek, modern wheelchair, and Luke's breath caught in his throat. She was stunning. Blonde hair pulled back in an elegant bun, sharp cheekbones highlighted by the restaurant's golden light, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than his monthly teaching salary. But it wasn't her beauty that made his chest tighten, it was the familiar way she paused at the threshold, her green eyes quickly scanning the restaurant's layout, calculating obstacles and pathways with practiced efficiency. Luke knew that scan. He'd watched someone else make those same calculations 1,000 times before. The hostess approached Amy with an awkward smile, clearly flustered. We can seat you, but there's a small step up to the main dining area." "The step's too high," Luke said, appearing beside them so suddenly that Amy startled. His voice was gentle but certain. "But there's a ramp entrance through the side patio. I noticed it when I arrived." Amy looked up at him, her professional mask slipping just slightly to reveal surprise. "You must be Luke." "I am." He smiled, and something warm flickered in her eyes. "May I show you the way?" "Lead on." As they settled at their table, Amy studied him with the sharp focus of someone accustomed to reading people quickly. Most people either stare or pretend not to notice at all. You did neither. Luke set down his menu, meeting her gaze directly. "Should I have pretended not to notice?" "No, She paused, caught off guard by his straightforwardness. "It's just unusual. Most men on first dates either act like my wheelchair doesn't exist or treat it like it's the most important thing about me." "Which would you prefer?" She laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her entire face. "Neither, actually. I'd prefer they just see it as part of who I am." "Like the color of your eyes or the way you laugh," Luke said simply. Something shifted in Amy's expression, a wall cracking just slightly. Exactly like that. The waiter appeared, and as they ordered, Luke found himself watching Amy navigate the interaction with quite confidence. She asked about ingredients with the knowledge of someone who knew exactly what she wanted, recommended wine pairings with the casual expertise of someone who dined in places far fancier than this. "So," Amy said once the waiter left, "Angela tells me you're a high school history teacher. That must be challenging." Luke smiled at the diplomatic understatement. Teenagers are basically tiny tornadoes of emotion and poor decision-making. But they're also incredibly honest. They'll tell you exactly what they think of your lesson plan, your tie, and your life choices, usually all in the same sentence. Sounds terrifying. It keeps me humble. Luke took a sip of wine. "Angela mentioned you work in tech, but she was pretty mysterious about the details." Amy's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Monroe Technologies. I'm the CEO." Luke nearly choked on his wine. "Monroe Technologies? As in the company that's been in the news for revolutionizing data security?" "Guilty as charged." "Wow! My daughter Grace is going to flip when I tell her. She's interested in coding, and I think I remember her mentioning your company's work on cybersecurity for healthcare systems." Luke shook his head in amazement. "She follows tech industry leaders pretty closely." "She knows about the company?" "She reads Forbes for fun and studies business leaders. She'll probably have 1,000,000 questions about your career path." "Smart kid. How old is she?" 16, going on 35.
She's been the adult in our relationship since, well, for a while now. Amy caught the shift in his tone but didn't push. Instead, she leaned forward slightly. Tell me about her.
For the next 20 minutes, Luke's face lit up as he shared stories about Grace, her quick wit, her determination to master calculus, her habit of leaving motivational post-it notes on his bathroom mirror. Amy found herself genuinely captivated, not just by his obvious love for his daughter, but by the gentle way he spoke about parenting challenges, his respect for Grace's independence, his pride in her resilience. "She sounds remarkable," Amy said as their appetizers arrived. "She is. She's had to be." Luke's expression grew thoughtful. "Kids have an amazing capacity to adapt when life demands it of them." Something in his voice made Amy set down her fork. "Demands it of them?" Luke was quiet for a moment, seeming to weigh his words. "Grace lost her mother 4 years ago. She had to grow up faster than any kid should have to." "Oh, Luke, I'm so sorry." "Thank you." He met her eyes. It was a long illness. 3 years of watching someone you love fight a battle that can't win. Grace was incredible through all of it. Stronger than I was, honestly." Amy felt her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "What was her name?" "Rachel." Luke's smile was soft, tinged with old grief. "She would have liked you, I think. She always said she could tell a lot about a person by how they treated waitstaff and whether they looked people in the eye when they talked. 2 tests I apparently passed? With flying colors." They ate in comfortable silence for a few moments before Amy spoke again. "Can I ask what happened? You don't have to answer if it's too difficult."
Luke considered this, then nodded slowly. Rachel had a rare autoimmune disease. It started with joint pain, fatigue. We thought it was a stress from her job as a nurse, but it progressed quickly. Within a year, she needed mobility aids. Within 2, she was in a wheelchair full-time. Amy's breath caught. The casual way he'd mentioned the wheelchair, his immediate understanding of her navigation needs at the restaurant, it all made sense now. "That's why you knew about the ramp," she said softly. "Among other things." Luke's voice was gentle. "I learned to see the world through different eyes during those years, to notice curb cuts and door widths and bathroom accessibility, to understand that most of the barriers aren't physical. They're in how people react." Amy stared at him, pieces clicking into place. Most people don't have that education. No, they don't. And honestly, I wish I'd never needed to learn it. But since I did, well, it changed how I see things, how I see people. The weight of understanding settled between them. This wasn't pity or inspiration-seeking. This was recognition from someone who'd walked a similar path. I was 28 when it happened. Horseback riding. I'd been competing since I was 12, had Olympic aspirations. The horse spooked during a cross-country event, threw me into a stone wall. Shattered 3 vertebrae. He listened without interrupting, without the awkward sympathy face she was used to receiving. The doctors were very clinical about it. Complete spinal cord injury, T12L1, no sensation or voluntary movement below the point of injury. They explained it like they were describing a broken appliance.
"How long was your recovery?" 6 months in hospitals and rehab facilities. But the real recovery, learning who I was going to be now, that took years. Amy traced the rim of her wine glass with her finger. "I built Monroe Technologies for my hospital bed, actually. Started with consulting work on my laptop, grew it into something bigger. Partly because I needed the income, but mostly because I needed to prove that my mind was still sharp, even if my legs weren't." Proving something to yourself or to others? Amy considered this. "Both, I think. The business world already saw me as an anomaly, A woman in tech was unusual enough. A woman in a wheelchair? I became either an inspiration story or a liability concern, never just a CEO. That must be exhausting. It is, though I've learned to use their underestimation to my advantage. They expect me to be fragile or grateful or inspiring. Instead, I'm ruthless. She grinned. It's very effective in negotiations. Luke laughed. Remind me never to buy a used car from you. Smart man. As their main courses arrived, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Grace's college plans, Amy's latest business ventures, their shared love of historical documentaries. But underneath the easy banter, something deeper was building. Luke found himself studying Amy's expressions, the way she gestured when she got excited about a topic, how her whole face changed when she laughed. There was a vitality about her that was magnetic, a fierce intelligence that drew him in. Amy, meanwhile, was discovering that Luke was nothing like the men she usually encountered. He didn't try to impress her with wealth or connections he didn't have. He didn't ask probing questions about her disability or treat her like an inspiration. He simply saw her, the whole of her.
"Can I tell you something?" Amy said as they shared dessert. "Of course. I almost canceled tonight. 3 times, actually." "What changed your mind?" "Amy's coworker, Angela. She told me you had the gentlest heart she'd ever known. In my world, gentleness is rare. I was curious what that looked like." Luke set down his fork, something vulnerable crossing his face. "And what does it look like?" "Like someone who notices ramps without being asked. Like someone who talks about their daughter with pure joy, even when discussing loss. Like someone who sees strength instead of limitation." The air between them grew charged with possibility. "Amy," Luke said quietly, "I need to tell you something. I haven't been on a date since Rachel died. I wasn't sure I ever would be again." "What changed?" "Grace. She's been telling me for months that I need to start living again." He smiled ruefully. "Tonight, she literally fixed my tie and told me that Mom would want me to be happy again, that I deserved to find that happiness. She practically pushed me out the door. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes." Luke's expression grew serious. "But I want to be honest with you. I'm not sure I know how to do this anymore. Dating, I mean. Especially with someone as remarkable as you." Amy felt her heart skip. "Remarkable? You built an empire while rebuilding yourself. You're brilliant, beautiful, and you laugh like you mean it. You're completely out of my league." "Luke Andrew," Amy said firmly, "you are a man who spent 3 years caring for someone you loved, who raised an incredible daughter through grief, who sees people for who they really are. Trust me, you're in exactly the right league." When the check arrived, Luke reached for it automatically. Amy moved to intercept, but he caught her hand gently, a brief touch that sent electricity through both of them. "May I?" he asked. Amy started to protest. She made more in a month than he probably made in a year, but something in his expression stopped her. "This is important to you." "Yes." She nodded slowly. "Then, thank you." As Luke signed the receipt, Amy watched him, feeling something she hadn't experienced in years, the desire to be taken care of, not because she was incapable, but because someone wanted to care for her. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Anything. Doesn't it bother you? The wheelchair, I mean. Most men see it and see burden, complications, limitations." Luke set down his pen and looked directly at her. "Can I show you something?" At Amy's nod, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos until he found the one he wanted. He turned the screen toward her. The image showed a woman in a wheelchair at what looked like a graduation ceremony. She was beautiful, with dark hair and bright eyes, surrounded by flowers and wearing the biggest smile Amy had ever seen. Despite being obviously frail, she radiated pure joy. This was Rachel at Grace's 8th grade graduation, 3 months before she passed. Look at her face.
She was in pain every day by then, frustrated by her limitations, scared of what was coming. But she was also fiercely alive, wickedly funny, and absolutely determined to squeeze every drop of joy from whatever time she had left.
He put the phone away and met Amy's eyes. The wheelchair was never the burden. The burden was watching someone I loved struggle and knowing I couldn't fix it. But Rachel taught me that fixing isn't always the point. Sometimes the point is just to be present, to see the person for who they are, not what they can or can't do. Amy's eyes filled with tears. She didn't try to hide. Most people see my success and think I've overcome my disability. But I haven't overcome it. I've integrated it. It's part of who I am now. And who you are is extraordinary, Luke said simply. As they prepared to leave, Amy navigated toward the door, then stopped suddenly. The entrance was blocked by a large group waiting to be seated, their bodies forming an impassable wall of coats and conversation. Luke saw her shoulders tense as she calculated whether to ask them to move or wait it out. Without hesitation, Luke stepped forward. "Excuse me, folks, could we squeeze through? Thank you so much." His voice was warm but confident as he gently created a path, his hand barely touching Amy's shoulder to guide her through the crowd. Outside, the February air hit them like a slap, but Amy barely noticed the cold. She turned to Luke, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You know what struck me most tonight?" "What?" "You never once offered to help me unless I actually needed it. You didn't assume incompetence, but you also didn't ignore genuine obstacles. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Luke thought of Rachel, of the 1,000 small negotiations they'd made together, learning when to help and when to step back. "I had a good teacher." Amy pulled on her gloves against the winter wind. "Grace is lucky to have you as a father."
"I'm the lucky one," Luke replied. "She saved me after Rachel died. Gave me a reason to keep going when I wasn't sure I wanted to." "I'd love to meet her sometime," Amy said carefully, "if you think she'd be comfortable with that." Luke's smile could have powered the city. "She's been encouraging me to start dating again for months, and once I tell her who I had dinner with tonight, she'll probably have 100 questions prepared for you. Fair warning, though, she'll want to discuss cybersecurity protocols and ask for career advice. I like her already." Amy's driver brought her adapted van around, the familiar hum of the wheelchair lift engaging. As she prepared to transfer, she looked up at Luke. "I need to tell you something. I'm complicated. My life is busy, demanding. The wheelchair is just one part of it. Dating me wouldn't be easy." Luke knelt down so they were at eye level, a gesture so natural that Amy's breath caught. "Amy, I spent 3 years watching the strongest woman I knew face impossible challenges with grace and humor. I learned that easy is overrated. Easy doesn't teach you anything. Easy doesn't show you what someone's made of. I'm not looking for easy. I'm looking for real." Amy reached out and touched his face, her fingers cold against his cheek. "You're not what I expected, Luke Andrew." "Neither are you, Amy Monroe." She laughed, that same genuine sound from earlier. "I have a board meeting at 7 tomorrow morning that I'm completely unprepared for because I spent all day nervous about tonight. Was it worth it?" "Every single minute," she said softly. Then with a playful smile, "Though my shareholders might disagree."
2 weeks later, Amy sat in Luke's modest kitchen, watching him cook dinner while Grace peppered her with questions about artificial intelligence and venture capital. The apartment was small but warm, filled with family photos and Grace's academic awards, and Luke's lesson plans scattered across every surface. "So, when you started the company," Grace was saying, her laptop open beside her plate, "were you scared about the market volatility in emerging tech sectors?" Amy nearly choked on her water. "Did you just ask me about market volatility?" "Grace reads Forbes for fun," Luke explained, setting down a plate of pasta. "I've given up trying to understand her brain." "I like to be informed about potential career paths," Grace said with teenage dignity. "Amy's company has amazing internship programs." "Grace Elizabeth Andrew," Luke warned. "We talked about this." "What? I'm just saying, hypothetically." Amy looked between father and daughter, seeing the easy affection, the gentle teasing, the way Luke's whole face softened when he looked at Grace.
This was what love looked like in practice, not grand gestures, but daily choices, small kindnesses, shared laughter over dinner. Actually, Amy said, we do have a mentorship program for high school students interested in STEM fields, if you're genuinely interested, not just being polite. Grace's eyes went wide. Are you serious? Dead serious. Send me your transcript and a personal statement about why tech interests you. I'll see what I can do. Grace launched herself around the table to hug Amy, her enthusiasm infectious. Over her shoulder, Amy met Luke's eyes. He was looking at her with such warmth, such gratitude, that she felt her heart skip. Thank you, he mouthed silently.
Later, after Grace had gone to bed clutching a stack of programming books Amy had brought, Luke and Amy sat on the small couch, her wheelchair positioned close enough that their knees almost touched. "She adores you," Luke said. "The feeling is mutual. She's incredible, Luke, brilliant and kind and so much like you. She gets the brilliance from her mother. The kindness, too, probably." Amy was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" "Always. I've never wanted kids. My accident, my career, my lifestyle, it never seemed compatible. But watching you two tonight..." She trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Tonight what?" "Tonight I started wondering what it would be like to be part of something like this. A family." Luke reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Amy, I know it's crazy. We've known each other 2 weeks." "It's not crazy." His voice was quiet, sure. "Rachel used to say that some people come into your life like seasons. They're meant to be temporary, to teach you something and then move on. But others come like gravity. They change your entire orbit. Which am I?" Luke lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles softly. "You're gravity, Amy Monroe. You've been changing my orbit since the moment you rolled through that restaurant door." 3 months later, Amy arrived at Luke's apartment to find Grace in tears at the kitchen table. College rejection letters spread before her. "MIT said no. So did Stanford. I'm never going to get into a good engineering program." "Grace," Amy said gently, settling her wheelchair beside the table, "can I tell you something about rejection?" Grace nodded, wiping her eyes.
Before I started Monroe Technologies, I pitched my business plan to 47 investors. 46 of them said no. They said I was too young, too inexperienced, too much of a risk. One told me that disabled entrepreneurs were inspiration stories, not investment opportunities. Grace's eyes widened. "What did you do?" "I found investor number 47, and then I built something so successful that the other 46 spent years regretting their choice." Amy smiled. "Sometimes rejection isn't about your worth, it's about their vision, or lack thereof." "But what if I'm not good enough?" "Grace, you are one of the smartest people I know, and I run in circles with some pretty brilliant minds. These schools didn't reject you because you're not good enough. They rejected you because they have limited spots and tough choices to make. That doesn't define your potential." Luke appeared in the doorway, having overheard the conversation. The look he gave Amy was pure love. "Besides," Amy continued, "some of the most innovative minds I know went to state schools or community colleges first. It's not where you start, it's what you do with the opportunities you get." Grace managed a watery smile. "Thanks, Amy." "Always, sweetheart." That night, after Grace had gone to bed feeling significantly better about her future, Luke and Amy sat in the garden behind his building. It was late spring now, the Chicago air finally losing its winter bite. "You were amazing with her tonight." "She's going to be fine. Better than fine. She's going to change the world." "I meant it, you know, what I said about gravity." Amy turned to look at him, struck by the seriousness in his voice. "These past few months with you and Grace, it's the happiest I've been since before Rachel got sick. Maybe the happiest I've ever been, period."
Luke, I love you, Amy. I love your brilliant mind and your terrible jokes, and the way you argue with the news anchors on TV. I love how you see Grace, not as my daughter who happens to be around, but as her own person worthy of respect and investment. I love that you make me want to be better than I am. Amy's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. So much it terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Because I've spent 5 years building walls to protect myself from exactly this, from someone who could hurt me if they left. Luke reached for her hands. Amy, look at me. She met his eyes, seeing nothing but steady love there. I'm not going anywhere. Not because of work pressure or social awkwardness or accessibility challenges or anything else. You're stuck with me. Promise? I promise. On one condition. What? Luke slid off the bench and onto one knee beside her wheelchair. Amy's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. Marry me, Amy Monroe. Marry me and let's build something beautiful together. Let's show Grace what love looks like when it's brave and real and willing to take risks. Amy stared at the ring, a simple solitaire that caught the light from the building's windows, then looked up at Luke's face, seeing hope and love and absolute certainty there. Yes, she whispered, then louder, laughing through her tears. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. As Luke slipped the ring onto her finger, Amy thought about the journey that had brought them here. The accident that had changed her life's trajectory, Rachel's illness that had taught Luke to see beyond surface assumptions. 2 people who had learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, seeing clearly, and choosing each other again and again.
6 months later, they married in the same restaurant where they'd had their first date. The ceremony, small and perfect. Grace served as maid of honor, crying happy tears and taking approximately 300 photos. Amy's parents, who had flown in from Boston, marveled at how their daughter glowed with happiness. During their vows, Luke spoke about second chances and the courage to love again. Amy talked about finding someone who saw her completely and loved all of it. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. But the moment that would stay with everyone who witnessed it was when Luke, instead of the traditional kiss to seal their marriage, knelt down beside Amy's wheelchair and took her face in his hands, kissing her with such tenderness that the photographer nearly forgot to capture it. Later, at the reception, Grace gave a toast that brought down the house. Amy, she said, raising her champagne glass, thank you for showing my dad that his heart was big enough for more love. And Dad, thank you for showing Amy that she deserved someone who would love all of her, exactly as she is. You two are proof that the best love stories aren't about perfect people. They're about real people who choose to build something perfect together. Share this with someone who needs to remember that beautiful chapters can begin after loss. As Amy and Luke danced to their wedding song, with Amy in her chair and Luke beside her, their movements perfectly synchronized, she caught sight of Grace beaming at them from across the room.
"What are you thinking about?" Luke asked, spinning her chair gently. "I'm thinking about gravity," Amy replied, "and how sometimes the most beautiful thing about falling is that you land exactly where you're supposed to be." Luke smiled, understanding perfectly. "Here's to gravity, then. Here's to gravity, second chances, and love that sees clearly." They continued dancing as the Chicago skyline glittered beyond the windows. 2 people who had learned that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin not when we stop grieving what we've lost, but when we become brave enough to embrace what we might still find. The wheelchair sat beside their table later that evening, as natural as any other chair. And for the first time since Rachel's death, that felt exactly right. Amy had found her place in Luke's life not by replacing what he'd lost, but by adding something entirely new. A love built on understanding, acceptance, and the beautiful courage to try again. As they left for their honeymoon that night, Grace hugged them both tightly. "Mom would have loved her," she whispered to Luke. Luke looked at Amy, radiant in her wedding dress, and smiled. "I know she would have. I think she sent her to us." And somewhere in the stars above Chicago, perhaps she had. Friends, if this story touched your heart the way it touched mine,
if it reminded you of the power we all have to change someone's life with a simple act of kindness. Please don't just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button and join our Everbells Stories family.